F123 is right around the corner, and we've been lucky enough to be given a preview build of the game. With the handling improvements this year making up a large part of EA and Codemasters' marketing for F123, we were expecting big changes to on-track performance. So were we surprised or disappointed? I'm Mark from RacingGames, and here's how we found test driving the new handling in F123. Whilst not a final build by any stretch, being limited to Grand Prix and time trial mode only, we have had a great time with the new handling so far. The changes to traction and torque have made for a much improved experience, as after years of playing with medium traction control, we were able to turn the assist off completely and not get thrown into a barrier on every corner exit like in previous games. That doesn't mean you are glued to the road though. You can still get on the power too early, with too much steering angle, or with your rears on different surfaces and lose the back end completely. However, the car no longer bites your hand off at every opportunity. This is especially noticeable when you hit high revs in a low gear, such as at race starts or coming out of a painfully slow chicane. No more spinning at the bus stop chicane. Yes! This is a huge change from F122, and is arguably fixing the biggest issue in the handling of last year's game. Players will now be able to get their foot down a lot earlier, and with a lot more confidence, at least with their right foot. For braking, it's a slightly different story. Along with the huge improvements to the throttle, changes have also come to the brakes, and these might be the most dramatic in the game. Locking up is now easier than ever, with the usual F122 meta settings of maximum brake pressure and full front brake bias now just being a recipe for tyre smoke. Those with a more cultured left foot may be able to run similar brake setups as before, but for those that aren't trying to compete at the sharp end of PSGL, it will be a different story. Once again, pulling the brake bias too far to the rear will cause rear locking, something that is even worse than locking up the fronts. While we haven't played around with setups too much to see if there is any golden setting, around 55% seems to be ideal. These changes to braking in particular will set the skill gap for F123, and will take some adjusting to for players at all levels. So we're no longer spinning like a fidget spinner on corner exits, but we might end up torpedoing on corner entries instead. That's no bad thing in our opinion. These changes bring the F123 cars more into line with how Formula 1 cars behave in other titles, and thus feel more realistic and genuine than the previous iterations of Codemasters' handling. Speaking of setups, they've had a bit of an overhaul in F123 too. Last year saw the full range of aerodynamic settings opened up, taking the slider from 1 to 11 to 0 to 50. This year it's the suspension settings that are getting a similar treatment, but they aren't alone in changing. Front and rear suspension now have a range of 1 to 44, while front and rear anti-roll bars are 1 to 21. Front and rear ride height is set to 30 to 50. This is likely to reflect the higher ride height rules that have come into Formula 1 since the 2022 regulations were first adopted. This will continue to make setups more minutely tweakable and personal. The best setup is still likely to be low aero, with a stiff front that provokes more rotation, but given this was only a preview build, we've had limited time on it, so it's hard to say right now. Elsewhere in the setup, suspension geometry values have finally been made sane. Front camber now goes from 2.5 to 3.5 with no minuses, whilst the rear camber values are 1 to 2. Front toe is set from 0 to 0.1, and rear toe is 0.1 to 0.3. Again, this may just be a visual change to the setup option rather than an actual change to the underlying car. Time will tell on that one. Likewise, the brakes have been rationalised, with minimum brake pressure now 80% and the bias numbers flipped, with 70% being maximum frontward bias and 50% the maximum rearward. Finally, tyre ranges have been opened up as well. Front pressure now has a range of 22 to 25 psi and rear pressures are 20 to 23 psi. There are so many new ways to set up the car now in F123, it's opened up the door for a wide range of setups when it comes to different race lengths, weather conditions, and ability levels. We'll be releasing a full set of setups when the game launches, so be sure to subscribe to the channel now if you haven't already, to make sure you're the first to see the optimum setups for each and every track. Fixing the handling was always going to be a priority for Codemasters in F123, and from what we've seen so far, they have mastered the new handling model. While some will now lament life being too easy on the throttle and too hard on the brakes, the learning curve feels much more natural in F123. There will be a lot of retraining muscle memory for those looking to compete at a higher level on F123, but for casual players, the ABS assist will help keep you on the straight and narrow, so overall it's a great balance. Now you've seen the new handling, are you feeling better about F123? Let us know down below, and why not give the video a like while you're there. For now though, thanks for watching. I've been Mark from RacingGames, and we'll catch you here again on the channel soon.